Hi, my name is Yahav, and I was born and raised as an Israeli and as a Zionist. During the past few years, I've gone through the process of questioning the narrative I grew up with regarding this land we live in and the people living on it. This podcast is about voices of the disillusioned. Each episode is a one-on-one, heartfelt conversation with an activist who supports the Palestinian struggle, telling the story of the journey that led them to see through what they were taught. Each of these people has their own unique path that I believe anyone can learn from, whether you're a Palestinian or a Jew, living here or abroad, or just anyone who feels strongly about this subject. I hope you learn as much as I learned from them about how to build a better future for all people between the river and the sea. Arnon served in the Israeli Air Force Intelligence Unit, which was operating in Gaza during the early 2000s. A few years later, once the war with Lebanon broke out, he decided to stop serving in the military. Throughout the years, he was active in different joint initiatives with Palestinians and other groups, and today works as an educator in a kindergarten and an ecotherapist. Arnon is constantly in a search for ways to liberate himself and others from the many systems of oppression that are linked together for himself and for generations to come. Hi, Arnon.
Hi, Yav.
I'm really happy that you're here.
I'm also happy.
Welcome to the podcast. And as always, we're going to start with the generation before you, and maybe two before you. Tell me about yourself, about your family, actually. Where they come from? What's your background?
So, I was born in a kibbutz in Magan Michael, and my grandparents were the founders of the kibbutz, and it was a very nice, kind of utopic place to grow up as a child.
A kibbutz is an income-sharing community.
Yeah.
For people who don't know the term.
Yeah, that was very common in the early days of Israel, and it still exists today, but it's more individualized today and less a commune. But to grow up there as a child I had a very good childhood. And my grandparents who found the kibbutz, they started it in a project that was in a different place where all this group was invited to create a false community where they were a cover for an operation of weapon manufacturing and ammo manufacturing underground. And so above the ground there was the kibbutz, where they had the chicken house and the kitchen and everything. And then there was the laundry place where everyone is doing the laundry all together. And underneath the laundry place, there was a secret weapon factory. And I did a tour there 2 years ago with my father for his birthday. He was actually born there. And I was thinking about it, that it's very similar in different ways to what, Hamas weapon factory or other organization would look like, because it was underground, and if you're exposed, you'll probably die. And
so this was an underground ammunition factory that was used by the Jewish factions of the Haganah, the Etzel, the Lehi.
Exactly.
Who were the militant groups who were trying to form an Israeli country.
Yeah. And later on, during the 1948 war, this ammunition was used where you can't count only on import of ammunition. So in some say that it was kind of one of the reasons they could fight and win this war. So
they relied on this ammunition that they were manufacturing themselves to carry out establishment of the state, or what Palestinians call the Nakba.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. And it was located next to a British headquarters, actually, because they thought that over there, they wouldn't look because it was just like under their nose. So
it's interesting because above ground, there was, like you say, a false community that was just there to cover up for the factory. And then there was, kindergartens and civilians living and eating and working above all that, what you call today human shields.
Human shield, exactly.
And did all the people in the community know about this underground factory, or some of them didn't know?
Yeah, all of them knew about it, but just a few of them were like operating operating it. So they were all like part of this cover up. They had to agree to do it together. They had to agree to do it before they knew what they're going to do. Even there was an asker group. They want to be part of the Zionist project and to do a very secret operation, all of you together, and you don't know what it is, and they all sat together and decided, yes, we want to do it, whatever it is. And
wow, so these young people,
like 20 years old,
agreed to be part of this project ahead of time, before they knew what exactly it was, but they knew that it was going to be something illegal according to the British that were ruling at the time.
They knew it's going to be secret, and they were risking their lives. And a few years later, I think maybe 3 years after this, actually after the war, this was, 46 or something, and then 49 after the war, they relocated where they are located now, next to the coast.
Because they were done with their project. They didn't need the ammunition anymore, or
I think it went to overground, and TAS became, so they didn't need it an underground project.
Oh, so like after the establishment of the state, they didn't need to hide it anymore. They it became like the official state
military
security
industry.
Apparatus. Wow.
Yeah.
I think that this tells a lot about the story of the Zionist project and the establishment of Israel, because it's like, these militant factions, aiming for a military operation that would assist them in establishing the state. They had to hide it in the beginning. And then once the establishment kind of accepted them as the sovereign, it's just so ironic. It's just so ironic because today in Israel and in the international arena, this is called a terrorist group.
Yeah, so my father grew up there. My mother came there as a child, so she grew up there. And then I was born there. And when I was 7, my parents decided to move out of the kibbutz, out of the communal life, and to live a more private capitalist life, and we moved to Pardes Chana, which is a nice town. Today it's like famous for its alternative scene and so on. Back then it wasn't so famous about it. It was just close to the kibbutz, and it was nice living. So this is where I grew up.
Wow, I just want to say the story about the factory, the underground ammunition factory. It just really highlights what is considered legitimate and non-legitimate when it comes to violence and when it comes to using militant force as a means to an end, and how we tend to just look at our side as legitimate when using that kind of force, and looking at the other side as non-legitimate when they're using ammunition and using, armed forces.
Yeah, for sure. The monopoly on violence given to national states and supported by corporations is very disturbing for me.
Yeah.
The whole war industry and how we legitimize it. It's very, very disturbing.
Yeah. You went to a kind of secular school. You're a secular family.
Yeah, secular school. I was 1 year in what's called a democratic school, it's kind of an alternative educational system, which I today I admire it, but back in the days I didn't like it because I didn't have a lot of friends there, so I went back. And it was a calm town. And later on, when I moved to high school, I went back actually to studying at the high school of the kibbutz. It was more, less students and more open in a way, less restrictions, and also very Zionist and militaristic, which is the normal in Israel. Like when you finish high school, your next step is going to the military, and the better unit you go to, the more successful you are.
The better head start you get for life.
Yeah, better head start you get for life, and also better service you give to society. You're like a better person. And
so you didn't question going to the military. It was like a given.
Yeah, I didn't question it. I remember I wasn't excited about it. I was never excited about going to the military, but still I went. So I got summoned for the flight academy, which is like the highest, it's the top of what you can get to.
To be a pilot.
To be a pilot. And I went for it because it was the best option there was. And it wasn't that I wanted to be a pilot, and it wasn't like a dream of mine, but it was a good place to be. So I went there and I got accepted. And this is how I started my military service, actually, in the flight academy. So I was trying to be a pilot, and I was there for more than a year, which is a relatively long time. But after that, my flight level wasn't good enough, so I was dropped. It's called like from the academy. And then I had a choice, because I was already a long time in the military, so I had a choice whether I want to like kind of spend my rest of the time doing some insignificant work for another year and a half or a year and so, and finish my military service, or I want to do something more influential, interesting, challenging, and then I had to sign for more years, and I decided that I want to do that, and I want to do something meaningful.
And that means that you need to be an officer.
Yeah, that means I need to be an officer, and I need to serve a year or more extra. So for me, it was 2.5 more years, actually. So it was in total 5.5 years. And I chose to be an aerial surveillance system operator, which means you sit in an airplane and you operate the surveillance systems, cameras, basically. Very sophisticated and expensive cameras, which is very similar to what UAVs are doing. UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles that are used, drones that are used everywhere today. But in Israel, it was very advanced, the development of this. So this is what I went doing.
And before you kind of did the transition between being in pilot course and, signing a few more years and starting a new job, you had a few weeks where they sometimes, like when units have a few weeks, like in between different things, they kind of send them to the West Bank to kind of just like guard for a few weeks, right? So what happened there?
Yeah, so it wasn't in between, but it was during my training for being this operator. Part of it is kind of doing this service in the West Bank. So I went there for routine security, it's called. And I was basically sitting in a watchtower for 6 hours, and then you go rest 6 hours, and you do it again for a whole week or two. And it was exactly at this time. It was 2002, Passover, which we're now also in Passover. And there was a big terror attack in a hotel in Israel where a suicide bomber bombed himself in the middle of a really big Pesach holiday dinner with I don't know how many were killed there, but it was really horrifying and really shocking. And this day it was called Operation Defensive Shield, started in West Bank, where basically the entire Israeli military went inside the Palestinian cities in the West Bank and kind of sieged them with lots of arresting and lots of killing also, and
basically crack down on
like
them.
a crackdown on the West Bank and Palestine. And I was there sitting in the watchtower and watching all these reservists coming to our base to getting ready to go into the West Bank, which is, in a ways, it feels a little bit like what we're having now, like October 7, like this big thing. It's different scale, of course, but that everyone is recruiting, and we're like, we're going to get them, and we're going to get our security back, and we're going to do whatever it takes, and we're going to kill whoever needs to be killed. And so this was kind of the atmosphere also back then.
And so when you were witnessing what happened on October 7th and then what happened immediately after that, you felt like, this is familiar?
Yeah, I felt it is familiar, and I was a little bit surprised by the shock of people. Like I thought there was some kind of lack of memory or short memory. Like, we've been there before. We've seen what happened the last time we were attacked in this way, and how we retaliated, and it didn't bring any good. Like, look where we are now, and how come we're doing it all over again, but I don't know, 100-fold worse, you know, like casualties wise and destruction wise, and where do you think it's going to lead us? So yeah, like seeing this happening again in a way, but much, much bigger is shocking and scary, and
also not shocking in a way.
Yeah. And not shocking, and kind of, oh no, we've been there before. We know where it's going.
I think it also says a lot about, not only is it not shocking that, we're where we are now, but we can understand how we got here by looking at the very near history, just 21 years ago.
Yeah.
We were experiencing the same dynamic.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, where were we going to get if we were like perpetuating the same dynamic?
Yeah, and I want to say also something about like international peace movement or whatever it is, that I feel like the Second Intifada, the time that I served in the military, was one of the most horrific wars in this conflict, and it's not healed yet. It's like it's still traumatic and it's still bleeding. Like there were buses, people blowing up in buses, and there were of course a lot of casualties and arrests and all the things that happen in the Palestinian sides, and it wasn't addressed. Like like it was kind of, okay, we moved beyond it. Now let's go back to what was before, like to Oslo or whatever it was, and it wasn't like kind of processed, and people are still like living it with their anger and their hate and their fear. And now the October 7th just kind of reignited much more.
It seems like for Israel, or at least for like the, Israeli security apparatus, it's only about how much we are able to repress the violence coming out of Palestinians, and as long as we're not threatened to a certain extent, then we can just like move on.
Yeah.
And it's not really about like how to take care of the root cause, but more about like, as long as we're not seeing buses being blown up in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and in big cities in Israel, okay, we can just move on. Like we've done our job here.
Yeah.
But not thinking about how that could always re-erupt. Like you said, it could be reignited. It's not... Yeah, that's what happens when you try to kind of maintain the occupation instead of ending it.
Yeah, the oppression all the time increases. So back then, like after I finished this training, I was actually positioned in my unit and started right away to be flying in this airplane. And some of it was kind of surveillance gathering about Syria and Lebanon, routine intelligence, and a lot of it was flying over Gaza and being part of the what was called targeted killing, which is also an apparatus that was highly developed during these years of how to kill a certain person, a certain commander or whatever, without having a lot of damage, collateral damage, without killing other people or without risking Israeli soldiers. And so we were just gathering surveillance for many hours over Gaza.
Just like flying over Gaza for hours?
In circles, yeah.
Wow.
And just waiting for the right person to come out, to go, I don't know, in his car or however. And then at some point when the people in the military and the government decide it is good time, then just bombing him from there. And it was ongoing for the next 3 years of my life. Like every few weeks, every few months, there was this kind of killing and basically like eliminating the commanding level of Hamas. And I remember like the special intelligence people coming to us and showing us this chart of like the pyramid of Hamas. Like, today they talk about Sinwar and I don't know, other people. And so showing us like all the people and like doing X's on them and like basically eliminating Hamas. And 20 years later, Hamas still exists and still like operating. So it was really also showing me like how this is not the way. Like you can't eliminate an idea. You can't eliminate an ideology just by killing people, because the ideology we keep on going and even maybe strengthen by their sons and other people in the chain of command and all the other people that want revenge or let's see so.
But at the time, did you feel that this was effective, that it was right, that this was the way to operate as the Israeli military?
At the time, I thought it was right. We were told that this prevents from buses to blow up or terror attacks. Maybe it was doing so also. The head of the Air Force, Dan Chalutz, was at the time, came to our base and told us how it's okay legally and morally, and like told us what we're doing is very important. And I believed him. And at the same time, I also had like a bad feeling all the time around it. Like I didn't feel like happy about it. I didn't feel like a hero. Not that I felt bad about it, but I didn't feel good about it. It's not that I felt like this is the best thing to do. Right when I joined this unit, there was a big operation that I wasn't part of, in which a high commander in Hamas was bombed. They bombed his house with a lot of his family also, including, I think, 14 people got killed, and out of them maybe 9 children or something like this. And there was a lot of media hype around it, like whether it's moral, whether it's like...
in the Israeli media?
Both in Israeli media and also, of course, in international media and, I don't know, in Palestinian media. And probably said it was a crime, which it was. But so Chalutz was interviewed by Yair Lapid, which is the head of the opposition today, about
He was a journalist then.
He was the journalist
and then Chalutz was the head of the Air Force.
Yeah. So it was asked how does it feel to release a bomb that is going to bomb a house full of people, and Chalutz's answer was, it's just a small tilt in the wing. Like he was giving a very like hard, cold answer about like how physically it feels.
Like the wing of the plane.
Of the plane, yeah.
This is like a saying in Hebrew. Yeah. Very much used. Maka kala b'kanaf. Like it's just, you can brush it off. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, you're just doing your job. And I feel it's the same mentality in a way, because it's a cold way to do it, and you can't do it otherwise. You can't do it if you think all the time about the children getting killed there. You can't. I don't believe how people can do it. And in a way, you're just blocking your emotions to be able to keep on doing it, which is what I did. And in a different perspective now, seeing it as a therapist, it's psychopathic. It's like a disease of the soul, of the psyche, like to be able to kill people and not feeling anything about it. And this is what we're trained to do. It's very sad. It's very sad for me. So we would go to these operations, would fly above Gaza for a few hours. We would see, we were hoping there would be action, and action means that there is a bombing in the end. We see some bombing and someone get killed. And then you land and you go out to drink. You go out to drink in Tel Aviv and go on with your life. Like, and you can't tell about it to anyone.
Because it's a secret operation?
Because it's a secret operation, yeah. This is how my life has been during my early 20s, just doing this, flying over Gaza, going to drink, waiting for this to end in a way.
So you kind of did want this to end. You're not happy about it, but you know that this is what you have to do until enough time goes by and it's over.
Yeah, at the time I didn't have like enough knowledge both and also like mental capacity to say I'm not doing it anymore. You're told this is the most important thing. They count on you, like your unit, wherever, the military, the country counts on you. You can't abandon your friends. And yeah, so I was just waiting for it to end, basically.
It's crazy that you're talking about a phenomenon that we know so well in the past 6 months. The whole conversation about, the Israeli military trying to, get the bad guys, like get the highest ranked, Hamas militants through bombing them, which is almost impossible without what Israel calls collateral damage. And we know that is a code word for innocent people being killed. And the priorities are, we'd rather drop a bomb on a house and risk having children being killed than have soldiers, go in and kind of like cherry pick that person out of his whole family and maybe arrest him. Or I don't know, but like, no, the automatic solution is like, no, you just bomb him.
Yeah.
Because he's a terrorist and he deserves it. And there's not even the conversation of whether you should even be killing people, even if they're to blame for killing a lot of your people. That's not even a conversation happening. It's like he's a bad guy and he needs to die.
Yeah, this whole conversation about like death sentence to terrorists, which the government is trying to promote, is like, who is a terrorist? How you define as a terrorist? Once you know.
And what is the death penalty? Like, are we a country that supports the death penalty?
Yeah, but I'm saying even before that, you can say to someone he's a terrorist, and what is a terrorist is hard to define, and then you just shoot him, and you're not accountable for anything, and it can be a 15-year-old child risking the life of a soldier with a rock, and he's a terrorist, and now you can shoot him.
And that equates to a Hamas militant that is planning terror attacks. Like it's all one lumped into this one word called terrorist.
Yeah. So I want to say something about this targeted killing, which it did have some kind of logic, which part of it was not to risk soldiers.
Like going in.
Yeah, going in. But the other thing was also not to risk also civilians, because when you go with military, like, then there are also civilians that probably
will be killed.
So there was, I did see, and I still see like the logic in this, but the thing is there is ongoing escalation. And back then there was a big hype about a bomb dropped on a very high rank Hamas leader and killing members of his family, while today it's so widespread.
Yeah.
There's no question about who is killed, how many are killed, why are they bombed, who are there. It's like it's just free for all. And even like the bombing of the sons and the grandchildren of Hania, one of the prime minister or something of Hamas, like no one questioned like, why do they deserve to die just because they're his family? Like it's pure revenge, pure, I don't know how to call it. It's like,
and then the question about why are they accountable, and the answer that the Israeli public would give, which is, they should shun him, they should disown him. If they really are innocent, then they should have long ago detached from him and not, protect him and still live with him. But then it goes back to the beginning of our conversation with the underground ammunition factory. Whole families living above ground, knowing that that's happening, all in on it, did all of those people deserve to die?
Yeah.
Because they were all inside this project, this kind of underground militant operation? All the children in the kindergartens above ground? Like, and this is one story. Like, you're talking about this factory that became a museum.
Yeah.
By the way, this museum is part of the, the pride of the Zionist project. Like, this is their history.
Yeah.
People come there, like you said, to have tours and see, how we fought to establish the country. It's not questioned that this is actually the same methods that are being used by what we call our enemies today.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's such a double standard. Like, why do people deserve to die? Just because their family member is involved in some kind of operation against your people. And it's really crazy that like you said, it used to be a conversation. Now it's not even a conversation. Like the conversation isn't being had because
there's a total dehumanization of the people of Gaza, and by the mainstream Israeli media and public. And of course there are people and also soldiers that go in there and not try to kill everyone or anything. Like, I'm not saying that but generally there's full justification of the mass killing of innocent people, and it's very, very sad and disturbing. Also, because I think it can come back at us. I mean, it can come back at us. We don't realize like how one day you're up, one day you are the other side. You're the you're the terrorist. You're the oppressed one, and all of a sudden it's legitimate to kill you because we legitimized it.
Yeah. So none of the people that were serving with you had a bad feeling about killing a whole family of innocent people to just get this one kind of quote unquote terrorist?
There weren't, back in the days, there weren't many cases where a whole family or a lot of innocent people were killed. Usually there was just, I don't know, the driver of the commander or something like that. But there was a time that I remember that there was a woman that was serving with me that was in the same role as I was, which didn't spot a baby that was in the car, and the baby was killed. And she was very upset about it. And
this was her mistake, basically?
This was her and the entire crew mistake, or the entire, but she was kind of, I don't know, a main role in this operation. So I do remember people being upset by innocent lives, and especially baby being killed. And and again, when you see today the number of babies and children being killed, it's so shocking. You can't even comprehend it, it's.
Do you think that today this unit has soldiers in it that are expressing the same feelings when knowing so many babies are being killed? So many children, so many innocent people? Because the difference between what you're describing 20 years ago and what's going on today, it's really hard to imagine what is going through the minds and the hearts of those soldiers in a time where it's not one baby or one family and it's like, oh wow, that mistake was really horrible. It's thousands and thousands.
I think a lot of the bombing today are like there was an article about it, like they are initiated by AI and like it's not even this unit that deals with it. This unit usually deals with people operating on the ground or like specific people. But honestly, I don't know, because I'm kind of lost the contact with all the people that I was in contact with. So I don't know what goes on in their mind. I want to hope that something is changing for them too, in a way. And they're questioning it, but I don't know. And there was another thing that happened that kind of made me question. During my time in this unit, I was kind of the officer in charge of the operating system itself, like the technological side of it. And I went to this convention that invited different people from the military or the Air Force. And they were talking there about creating this kind of a system where a lot of drones are communicating among each other.
Which today we know. We see this.
Yeah, today it exists.
I've seen like art installations of drones dancing in the sky.
And back then it was like communicating targets in between them, like autonomously, and then being able to kill different targets. And he was comparing it to the Matrix, and he was comparing it to the agents in the Matrix, in the film The Matrix, where the agents can become anyone, and they just appear, and then they eliminate the virus or the target or the rebel. And I was like thinking to myself, wait, but you're telling me about this system that we're trying to create, which is like the agents in the Matrix, which means we are the bad guys. Like I was really like kind of not knowing what actually it means.
You're like, wait, so maybe we're the agents?
Yeah, like we're the agents, and I'm not sure I want to be an agent. Yeah, so this was, and today we see it. I even saw an interview in Haaretz this weekend about the guy serving in Gaza and telling how their whole operation was very technological, and you see all the people there like they have nothing, and they're like poor, and you're saying like in all the movies you see like the technological side and is usually the bad side, and the other side is the good side. But here it was. I'm still sure it's the opposite. And I was asking, how are you sure? Can you be really sure that it's the opposite?
Wow. It's amazing how like fiction has all these like ideas in it that we can really connect to and understand when it's like a story told to us. But then, like you said, like when it comes to our lives, suddenly there's like a different set of values that leads us.
Yeah. I also think it's a little bit, because reality is more complex.
Yeah.
And usually it's in the movies it's bad guys and good guys, and then we are used to think like this, and so of course we are the good guys, but in real life it's not like that. It's not.
Yeah.
And it's not the Hamas are the good guys. They're just the oppressed, and you can be either good or bad and
still be oppressed or oppressor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And eventually being good, I think, or I believe, is being able to create a better future for yourself and the next generations, and not winning over the bad guys, not eliminating the bad guys, because that doesn't work.
So after being an officer and serving in this unit, suddenly you had freedom to go do whatever you want.
Yeah, I was actually called to reserve a few days after I was released, because in this unit you do reserve service once a week. It's not like
once a week.
Yeah,
throughout the whole year.
Yeah,
for years.
Yeah, it's like also pilots. This is how they is how they serve. They basically stay in the military just
as employees. Basically.
As employees. Yeah.
So you never really get out of the army from this unit.
Also, most of the people who served with me release, they go to work in military industry, which operates UAVs. Like they're still doing it as citizens, getting paid a lot of money to do this work for the military. So they're like outsourcing, the military is outsourcing the occupation, and then you go and work for it.
And then you have a career.
Yeah, most of them do it for a few years while they're students. So they work twice a week in this work, and then once a week in the reserve. And this is how they pay off for their studying, and they save enough also to buy a house, which is not so easy in Israel. But
so it's a closed circuit.
Yeah.
It's like those are your options. You can profit from it. Why would you choose anything else?
Yeah, you profit from it. You get a lot of honor for it. And yeah, basically you're doing very important thing for your country. So why not? But as I said, for me, I already had a feeling I don't want to keep doing it. So yeah, I went abroad. I flew abroad after a few days of reserve service, which was the only reserve service that I did. Because during this trip in South and Central America mostly, and also Europe, I kind of started to have these thoughts about, first, that I don't want to do something that I can't talk about, like being in this military service, secret military service. Like I felt like I had to hide part of my, I don't know, personality or what I'm doing. And I didn't want to live like that.
Because you were meeting like other tourists and they were asking, what do you do? And you couldn't say anything about it.
Yeah.
So you're like, I don't want to lead this like double life that I can't talk about.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And today Israelis talk about how scary it is to be Israeli today, but I don't think it's because anti-Semitism mostly, or I'm sure there's also anti-Semitism, but it's because what we have been doing and what we are still doing today, which is
you don't feel comfortable disclosing your connection and your complicity with all of this.
So I remember don't wanting to do it, also starting to think about like how nonviolence looks like, and how is it possible to fight for your right or for your existence or whatever without using arms and so on. Like all these different ideas that's starting to emerge, and then I met this group of Israelis that I remember this, and there were 3 friends. 2 of them were in the military. One of them was an officer. The other one served in like this special unit that disguise themselves as Arabs so they can go into cities in the West Bank and arrest people. And he actually was injured. He had a bullet going in through his eye and stayed in his chest for the rest of his life. And it was like, and their friend, which is also kind of shows the complexity of the Israeli society, was a refuser. He refused to serve in the military because of the occupation.
And he sat in prison.
And he sat in prison. He was their best friend. So they were both like serving, and he wasn't, and they were still friends and traveling together. And I remember, and he was part of like, there was a trial for 5 of them. It was a famous trial back in 2000. And they were kind of the first ones that kind of refused because of the occupation. And because of that, it was very much in the media, and they were also sentenced for more time, because usually after a short arrest time, they let you go.
They wanted to make an example out of them.
Yeah.
They were the first in the second intifada, basically, to refuse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he sat in prisons for 2 years. And I remember asking him, like, okay, I understand you don't want to serve and you don't agree with it, and that's cool, but why did you want to sit in prison for 2 years? Like, you could say you're something else and you have a problem or something and get out. Like, didn't you? You made your point. Like, don't you think you waste your time? So he was asking me, what about you? Don't you think you waste your time 5.5 years?
In the military.
In the military. And I was kind of thinking, yeah, well, I didn't want to do it really. Like, I was doing it all the time because I felt this is the good thing, but it's not like I really wanted to do it. And yeah, it made me think. I remember this conversation, and later when I arrived in Berlin and I met a couple of Israelis who were more like radical left. They were also served in the military. One of them was serving in Hebron, which is the occupation there is very harsh for people who are serving there. It's very alive.
They had served.
At this
point, they were already. After
it was
that,
like they were in the 30s, and they had served. And the other one was also an officer, and they were very like radical thinkers, and they also talked to me a lot about the occupation and Israel. And I saw how I resonate with their logic, with their ideas. And then I was supposed to go back to Israel. And I met a girl, German girl, and I stayed there for a couple more weeks. It was a love story. And during these 2 weeks, the Lebanon war started, the 2006 Lebanon war. And I remember reading about it from afar and watching it from afar and seeing how it unfolds and how they kidnapped the soldiers, and then we came after them with 2 tanks, and the tanks blew up, and then everything just erupted. And I saw how the commands that we studied back in my unit, like how they're supposed to happen, actually happened. And it looked crazy to me. It just looked crazy, like bombing the Beirut airport and creating like killing 4,000 people, I think, in Lebanese people. And it was like, why are we doing it? What good will come out of it? Like, what the hell do we think that will happen after this? And I remember I was abroad. I didn't want to go back, but I said to myself that even when I go back, I don't want to be part of it. Like, this was already...
You also knew that you were going to probably be called back for reserves to serve in the unit that you didn't want to serve in anymore.
Yeah. And they called me and I just didn't answer. My mom was telling me, they're looking for you. And I told her, just tell them you don't know where I am, because I don't want them to call me, and I don't want them to know where I am. And it was very emotional for me. Like I don't know, it's like almost feeling as a traitor, you know, you're leaving your unit mates, and you're leaving your country, and people are fighting, and a guy from my class, from my kindergarten in the kibbutz was killed, and you know, it's like,
how can you sit and do nothing while your friends are sacrificing their lives? Yeah, this is very much the rhetoric still today.
Yeah,
definitely.
But I already had the feeling that I don't want to keep doing it, and then after it's ended, I actually went to my unit and I sat with my commander, and it was like, what's wrong with you? You know, what are you doing? And I said, I don't want to be part of it anymore. I think it's wrong. And he was like, what, did you fall in love with an Arab or something? What's... And I was, no, I just feel it doesn't lead to anything good, and I don't want to be part of it anymore. And maybe I will change my mind one day, but for now, I don't see myself continuing. And he was said he was sorry and he's disappointed for me, but kind of...
He let you go.
He let you go, and because it's like a special unit, it's not like they do anything to you. Like in other reservists, they sometimes go to jail or they transfer them to another unit. For me, they just like kind of let me go. Now I almost don't know any people who do reserve, and I have one friend who was also serving in a special unit and went to Gaza, and I'm not judging him. Like, I don't feel I can judge anyone, but I was talking to him about like the price that we pay, and about how is it possible for him to serve in a military that is getting its commands from a government that it's obviously corrupt and not for the good of the people. And like, how is it possible? How can you make this connection? So I do try to like make him in this case see the absurdity and the wrongness of this, but I can't judge him.
Because why? Because you were in his position yourself?
Because, as I said, it's not black and white. It's complex, and I don't know what exactly he's doing, and I don't know what is in charge of. Let's say a paramedic that's taking care of the injured soldiers or whoever. How can I tell him don't go and don't do it? You know, he's saving lives. So you know, it's more complex. That's what I'm saying. And also, I don't know what would I do if I was in his situation. And you ask me if it's because I did it. So yeah, part of the process I went through after going out of the military and starting to work towards, I don't know, liberation and working with Palestinians was kind of like letting go of the guilt. Because you realize that you did the best that you could for your understanding back then, and again, they're at their own process, and this is why I'm doing this podcast. This is why I'm talking to them, like trying to understand the complexity and also the atrocity of being part of what's going on right now, but on the personal level, like not judging them. And I also think that the way to actually liberate the Palestinians, actually stopping Israel, can't go only by judging it, by judging the option. It must also come with compassion and with like seeing how people came to do what they're doing, how it came to be that we're actually willing and actually bombing Gaza to the ground. What were the circumstances that actually allowed this to happen again?
Yeah, it's not the first time.
History.
Yeah.
So we can prevent it from happening more and more.
Yeah. So after you came back to Israel and you experienced all of this and you kind of like got yourself out of reserves, you decided to go study in university.
So I actually went studying. Today I realize as part of more understanding of society and reality, let's say. So I went to study sociology, anthropology, and media studies in Tel Aviv University. And there I got to be more familiar with critical thinking, both about the occupation, but also about society as a whole, and more exposed to academic and other thinkers. During this time also, like, I got familiar with Combatants for Peace, which came for one time to our university and talked to us.
Which Combatants for Peace are a group of Israelis and Palestinians, or at least it was founded as Israelis and Palestinians who took part in armed operations, whether it's like armed resistance or being officers in the military, and decided to work together to end the occupation. To work together against violence.
To end the occupation in a non-violent way, which is very special because
they decided to drop their weapons and work together.
Yeah,
that's
because especially for the Palestinians, because there aren't many oppressed groups in the world that are willing to work with the oppressor. In this case, Israelis who decided not to serve in the military and to work with the Palestinians, but still they are part of the oppressor in as a collective, and to work together towards liberation and towards peace. And it's very hard work, because from their side they're accused of normalization, which is kind of like you're cooperating with the oppressor, and like this you give them legitimization because
to keep oppressing.
Keep oppressing. But anyway, I was impressed. I was also doubtful. Like I questioned, okay, so you're working now together, but if there's another intifada, like, would you still be working together? And they told me yes. And they're actually today still working together, like even now, which is very, very impressive, in very hard conditions, under a lot of criticism and threats for their lives from both sides, like the Israelis from the Israelis and the Palestinians from the Palestinians. And so I got familiar with them, and also I did a seminar work about feminism, about comparing radical feminism with liberal feminism that wants to put more women in the military, and there I got more exposed to work about militarism with Uri Ben Eliezer from Haifa University, which explains a lot of the Israeli society and Zionist narrative and the atmosphere, which is super militaristic. Like, we're embedded in the militaristic point of view, like we're not even able to see outside of it. Like, seeing guns everywhere is normal. The flight of Independence Day where fighter jets, basically
paraded,
very expensive killing machines, are flying above our heads, and we are kind of cheering with it with flags and fireworks.
They do it as like a kind of show every year.
Yeah, and this is stuff that you see in North Korea and and Iran and also the US, because US is also very militaristic, but you don't see it in quote unquote normal countries. Like, it's not the thing to be proud of. Like, okay, have a good military to protect you, but it's not like this is
the main event of the Independence Day.
And
yeah.
So yeah, I got more and more critical in my thinking during that time.
So you finished your university studies and you discovered the Arabic language.
Yeah, I decided that if I actually want to change something here, I have to learn Arabic, because you don't learn it in school. You just learn it. You learn it very little, or you learn it if you go to intelligence.
Yeah.
And I decided that I want to learn it, so I joined the course, and I started. Since then, I took few different courses, and which exposed me to the Arabic language and culture and many things which are very beautiful about it, and not being afraid of it. You know, we're afraid of the Arabic language, and we know just phrases that are security phrases. So it was very, very insightful. And during this time of the course, the manager of the course, which was active in a youth work that put Israelis and Palestinians together and creating like a journalism together. So she said they have a meeting with partners in Nablus, and she asked me if I want to come. And this was actually the first time for me going to the West Bank, not in military. And I said, yeah, okay, let's go. And she also asked if I can be their driver. So I took my father's car from his work, and I took them, and we arrived there, and we're in Nablus, and we meet this guy, and he's a nice guy, and he takes us to the meeting, and this meeting is inside Balata refugee camp, which is a very famous camp for its resistance during the Second Intifada. Mm-hmm. I heard a lot of stories about it, and then I'm inside their small like alleys. It's a very crowded place because it's a refugee camp, and I'm inside there. I'm like kind of thinking to myself, "Am I safe here? And what's going on?" And we sit there with a group of people, and they talk about things, about things they want to do together and how to work with the children and so on. And next to us, there is a poster on the wall of this youth with a rib on his
like a headband.
Forehead, a headband, and a gun, and Al-Aqsa in the mosque on the background. And it's like, this is how we're used to think of a terrorist. Like, this is the image of a terrorist. And so after we left there, I was asking the woman I was coming with, like, how does she feel about this image on the wall? And she said, it's their son who was killed, and it's like a soldier on the living room, a picture of a young person as a soldier with a gun in the living room. It's the same for them,
like commemorating a family member that has been killed.
Yeah, killed in battle. Yeah.
It's like the same idea.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
And then you discovered, like, oh, we actually do the same. I just see it differently.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to get used to these different images. Yeah. So I was starting to be more acquainted with the Palestinian narrative.
And so during your Arabic studies and your involvement more in like joint groups, you went through more challenging situation mentally.
Yeah. I don't know if challenging, but it was very kind of shocking in a way. Yeah, I went through something mental, but also I don't know, I see it as a positive experience, but I was breaking up from my girlfriend, and I stopped smoking, and like many different things together, and I had some kind of mental. I also see it as a spiritual, I don't know if incident or phase, And I started to, I felt a lot of things change in me. And this made me more wanting to be more radical in life, like more like letting go of this whole Babylon system of oppression and just like break loose.
And be a hippie.
Be a hippie, total. Yeah, go all the way. And which I did. And I joined a group was called Love Revolution, that we did a lot of activities, mostly in Tel Aviv, but that were very meaningful for me also. Doing meditations in the street and going to hospitals to support people and dancing and all different kind of hippie things. And something about being in this mode also allowed me to be more compassionate towards my own people. Like until then I was very critical, like university critical, and about what we're doing, and kind of self-hate, like you see it sometimes in activism, that you see so much of the gap of the surrounding of you. I don't know whether it's veganism or whatever, like people around you that are not seeing the other, not being compassionate and don't see what you see, that you start to hate them, and
you develop like animosity towards the general society who doesn't see what you're seeing.
So there I could start to overcome it and like to just see people and to see like how we're all trying to do our best, and at the same time how a lot of us are acting out of fear, and just to be compassionate towards it, and to see that if I want to change, really to change, I can't just be right. I also have to be connected in a way. So I think this is also what happened. And during this time I also went becoming a nomad. So I actually left my job and I left my house and I started to travel around Israel, which was very interesting because I got to know a lot of people. I also been to the West Bank and also meeting Bedouins and other just people around Israel that I wouldn't get to meet otherwise. So it's kind of, I don't know, gave me also another perspective of life here. And during this time, I got to know a project called ECOME, which I later became part of, which was also a project bringing together Israelis and Palestinians, both for meeting and learning together, learning nonviolent communication together, doing courses together, singing together, but also kind of living together and in the same place. So
you kind of created like an eco village?
Yeah, like an eco project, you can call it. It wasn't really a village, but yeah, and then working in it together and hosting other people together.
Like groups that came to kind of learn from you guys?
Either from us or from teachers that came. We were kind of holders of the space, we were kind of creating a space where you can also sleep or just visit, and we cook and we create the conditions for the courses to happen there.
And this was in Area C, which is Area C in the West Bank, for those of you who don't know, is basically a space where both Palestinians and Israelis are allowed to be legally. It is occupied land, of course, but it's the rural area of the West Bank.
Yeah, it's the rural area of the West Bank, and it's less tension there in this specific area. It depends which area, but in this specific area that we've been. So we were actually staying on the land of a settler because this is what was available for us.
The only way to establish somewhere permanent was to pay, rent a space that a settler was living on.
Yeah, at least for the time, this was the only option, because if you would have looked more, maybe we could find a Palestinian that would rent us, but there wasn't.
Most Palestinians who have land on Area C are in some way trying to be evacuated from there.
Yeah.
Like trying to be
either evacuated,
chased off their land. So.
Yeah, or they have financial problems, or like they're not really, they don't have the capability to really allow this kind of project on their land.
Mm-hmm.
So we rented this place, and it went on for quite some time. I mean, it went on for 8 years, which it wasn't open for the whole year, because during the summer it's next to Jericho. Jericho is next to the Dead Sea, and during the summer it's like 40 something degrees.
Yeah.
And there's no air condition. There's no air condition there. There's hardly structure there. We were kind of like in tents or in like something like a greenhouse, which is pretty hot. So it wasn't open during the summer. It was open during the winters for 8 years. And the crew there, the team was exchanging every couple of years usually. So I got the opportunity to be part of a group that we lived there for this couple of years.
Of Israelis and Palestinians?
Yeah, so mostly Israelis. We were 7 Israelis. All of them are women. I was the only man. And then there was another 2 international women and another Palestinian guy. This was during my time. Different times it was a little bit different. So it was very unequal. But there was still this partnership, and there was also Palestinian volunteers who stayed with us and so on. And it was a very special time for me and for us, because it was kind of like not exactly living the dream, but kind of like dreaming together what can be and how we can actually live together. And it exposed me even more to the Palestinians in the more human side of it, like Palestinian culture and Palestinian cuisine, and like not seeing Palestinians as only as oppressed, but also just as people and as friends. And the place closed after these 8 years for different reasons. But it raised also different questions for me about whether it's really possible for us, for me, as an Israeli, to cooperate on the level that I wish with Palestinians. Because most of the people who've been there with us and I got close to and were, I can say, real partners of me, they are now abroad. They decided to go. They are kind of refugees. They're refugees.
The Palestinians.
In Germany and the US, because they don't want to live in these conditions anymore, and I understand them. But I got left with no one that I really can see still as a partner, someone that I want to work with, because they're all gone, and there are people, but I felt like I need also personal contact, and I can rely on them, and they can rely on me. So this was one question, and the other question that I got left with is, do we really want to live together, and what kind of life do we really want to have? Because other countries, it's mixed. There's, Italians, and there's, Swiss Italians, and there's immigrants, and they're kind of living together. And of course, there's communities and so on, but it's not like a big deal if you're mixed. And here in our society, an Arab and a Jew that are together, it's very rare and it's very complicated. And it's like even if you're left wing or whatever, there's still thought of whether or not Jews and Arabs can actually live together as a family, as a community. And of course, there are people who want to live with their own community and their own tradition. I don't have anything against it, but I'm saying like even the possibility of actually living shared life here, for whoever wants it, is very questionable in both societies. And this really raises a question for me of how do we really want to live here? Because here it's so charged, this whole topic.
After ECOME was closed, you could look at this as like a failure, but you could also look at it as like a certain step in the evolution of work, like joint work, co-resistance, for example.
Yeah. It's very difficult, almost impossible to find actually a place where Israelis and Palestinians can meet because of all the restrictions and all the challenges. But in a way, it is a failure, but also it created very strong connections between us, between Israelis and Palestinians and internationals. And actually, like this kind of community today, it's like a WhatsApp group, but we actually meet together and we meet with the children and we see each other and we care about each other. And also there is kind of a continuation where there is a house that is owned by Palestinians and is rented by Palestinians, which is different from what we had before, where there are different activities of shared living, of resisting, of learning together. It's called Satyam, and it's happening right now. It's actually starting because of the war, because of our friend, a Palestinian friend of ours, saying she gotta have a place like this. She doesn't have a place where she can feel like sane, and she can feel she can meet people who want to live together and want peace. So a friend of ours actually went there with her, and they found a house and they rented it, and there's a group of people of again holding it together and finding how to pay the rent for it and creating activities there. So it's kind of the continuation of ECOME in a way. It's not ECOME, but it's the evolution, like you said. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think it really makes a difference that it's in a Palestinian area, owned by a Palestinian, rented by a Palestinian.
For sure.
Because the power dynamics when it comes to like ownership of land or of finances, assets, I think it does make all the difference.
For sure. Like, the fact that it's owned and rented by Palestinians is very different from what we had. Yeah. It's also very challenging because she doesn't actually have the way to pay for it. Many of the Palestinians are unemployed right now because of the situation, and the economic situation is so bad. Like people are just, what are we going to do? Okay, let's resist. They don't have any hope. They don't have any. But with the help of Israelis and internationals, she and we managed to finance this place. So yeah, let's hope it continues.
Yeah. So you were active throughout the years with Palestinians from the West Bank, also Palestinian citizens of Israel or from Jerusalem, but you've never actually been able to meet Palestinians from Gaza because of the siege. And these were actually the Palestinians that you could say in a certain way were the victims of your operations in the military. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I actually got to know very few Gazans, like getting permits to go to the West Bank. And yeah, with one of them, I'm still in contact. I'm writing him, and he's writing about his situation in Gaza, which is horrible. But mostly I met people from the West Bank, and the Gaza situation is it's like the worst. It's like I don't know, it's like a black hole. It's like a living hell. I don't know. Even before October 7, even before the destruction that's been upon Gaza in the last 6 months, because it's an enclave under siege since 2006, since Israel decided to go out of Gaza and leave it as a besieged area for different reasons, which we can talk about it. But since then, I'm kind of like, I have a heart for Gaza. Watching the escalation and how it was bombed first in the end of 2008, like there was a campaign of bombing Gaza, and remember how it affected me I was mostly, I don't know, writing about it, talking about it, crying about it. That's mostly what I was doing, and also learning about it. So I listened to a podcast, and it's by this journalist who talk about the history of Gaza, of how it became, and how Ariel Sharon, the late prime minister, was kind of like the military governor of Gaza, or like a general that was in charge of Gaza, and the things he did there over the years.
And this is in Hebrew.
It's in Hebrew, yeah.
I will put a link for whoever knows Hebrew.
Yeah. And then I read a book also in Hebrew, and it's probably also published in English, but it's called I Shall Not Hate. During this 2008 operation, there was a Gazan doctor who his house was hit by Israeli tank, and because he was working in Israel and he knew news people in Israel, he got on air. And he was telling, they're shooting my house and they killed my daughters.
Wow.
And it was also a big thing. And then, of course, there was people trying to explain how there was, terrorist on his house or something. But anyway, his two daughters and his one nephew were killed. He later on, he was working in Israel as a gynecologist, as a women's doctor, and helping women to get fertile and so on. And he later on left to Canada with his family. His name is Izzadin Abu Elayash, and he wrote a book that's called I Shall Not Hate. And he writes about his history, about how his family used to live in a village where later on the house, the farm of Sharon, Ariel Sharon, the prime minister, was established on the village of his family.
On the lands of his family.
Yeah.
That is today actually the area, kind of what in Israel is called the Gaza envelope.
Yeah.
Like the area around Gaza.
Around Gaza, yeah.
So his family is actually refugees
from there, and then he grew up, he was born there, and then he grew up in Gaza. And he describes, again, like the escalation, how it became more and more hostile. And he says that even he lost his family, lost his daughters to the Israeli military and occupation, he realized he can't hate. Like, there's no hate, won't bring any redemption to him or to his people. And it's very beautiful to read him, and sad.
So this had a very strong impact on you?
Yeah, it was a strong impact on me, and it allowed me to know a little bit more about Gaza, and to see it more deeply, the tragedy there. So even before the October 7th, the siege around Gaza, and basically the prison that people are living there, and the fact that you can bomb there and not being accountable for it, it's very, very tragic for me. And I don't know what will come out of it. And from the people of Gaza, like, I really wish to see them recover. I really hope to see them recover from it. But right now it's really hard to see it. It's very desperate.
What would you say to someone if you met a person from Gaza who lost their family, for instance, from a operation that you were part of?
I would say I'm sorry. I don't think there are words. I don't think there's like, I think there's not much I can say. I can just try my best to create a different future for all of us. That's what I can do, which right now I feel it's not a lot that I can do, but I don't know, whatever I can.
And what have you been doing in the past few years? Can you share a little bit about your work?
Yeah, since leaving ECOME, I was kind of looking for my path. Like I feel like I'm finding it slowly, but I was studying to be a therapist, an ecotherapist. So I work with people in nature, both reconnecting to nature and both just like healing and therapy, as we all need it here and everywhere. And I started to work with children. So I work in education with kindergarten, also related to nature or gardening, but also different things. And I was doing also a men's circle where men just can meet and talk about their emotions or whatever is on their mind and their hearts. And different initiatives that kind of, I would say, allow healing in a way, because this is what I feel is needed the most. Another thing that I do is I grow with my son. Like, so parenting is also, I think, part of my activism in a way.
And what do you feel right now about raising your son in a militaristic society that one day will expect him to serve in the military like you did?
Yeah, so it's very problematic for me. I'm actually looking for also places abroad, because I really don't want him to be in this system. Like, even if I'm teaching him critical thinking, he's around his peer and are all going to the military you would want to go to. And so I am trying to expose him to different narratives. He's still small, so he's less than 6, so I'm not putting it on him right now, but I will at some point. But he already knows Palestinian people, which I didn't know.
I think that goes a long way. Just the humanization of these people that you're expected to go and fight when you're 18, I think makes a really big difference.
Yeah. And also, I am checking for options abroad, because even living here, with all these alarms and jets flying around, and the thing that you need to have a bomb shelter in your house, and all the normalization of all this is hard for me to think of him growing up like this, and also for me basically to live like this. I really don't want to live like this, and so I'm really checking my path for the future and where and how I want to live. And there's also guilt about it, because if you're living somewhere else, then you're not kind of, I don't know, doing enough here. But I'm not sure that's right, and there will always be part of my heart that's kind of like connected to here. Like, you can't disconnect from here, even if you feel, if you are abroad, you're connected to what's going on here somehow. I wish it could be less, but it's very affecting.
Wow, thank you, Arnon. Thank you for sharing from your heart.
Yeah, thank you for allowing it. Thank you for bringing these voices, different voices, complex voices. Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for everyone listening. If you want to support this podcast and support these stories, there's a link in the show notes to my Patreon. Bonus episodes are available there exclusively for Patreon supporters. And I really want to thank the people that are already supporting there. It basically covers the expenses of the podcast, but also really gives me the message that you want to keep listening. You want to keep hearing these stories. Thank you for everyone supporting. And thank you, Ro'i Geva, for the beautiful music that you will be hearing right now.